Hey everyone, Duke New with 3D here with another video for you guys, and I realize it's been quite a while since I've done a mask related video, so I'm just going to be doing this as a quick stopgap until the point where I get some more things in my collection that are noteworthy. I do hope to be getting some stuff off of my close friend Moulage here pretty soon, either late this month or possibly early next month. We'll see when that all transpires, but I'll keep you posted. But yeah, anyhow, today I just want to cover various things you want to consider and do when storing a gas mask collection or just gas masks in general. This is more or less geared towards, gas mask collectors, but if you have if you just have a smaller milsurp collection, you happen to have a couple masks in it, this may apply to you as well. But anyways, so first thing I want to mention, just get this right off the bat. Styrofoam heads, don't use them. Well, you can, but there's some stipulations to it. Styrofoam has a tendency to melt certain types of rubber, especially natural rubber, and if it doesn't do that, the styrofoam will melt off onto the rubber and stick, leaving it behind a really nasty residue, and it's just not something you want to deal with. I've seen prototype masks from another collector, I'm not going to name who, and he's pulled it off of like a styrofoam head years later, and they're just covered with crap all over the inside. So you definitely want to have something in between a mask and a styrofoam head. Typically I'll see collectors using one or more layers of stocking material, or they'll use some sort of cloth or paper. Personally for me, I avoid using heads as a display method, and there's a number of reasons why, but I'll get to the main one in a moment. But yeah, as you can see, the main thing that I do, this is probably the best way in my opinion to store masks, at least in terms of a face form, is to stuff them with packing paper, acid-free packing paper. The white stuff I do not believe is acid-free, but it is, not as potentially harmful as using something like newspaper, where the ink could bleach in and stain or potentially degrade the rubber. Just use any old generic packing paper, especially the brown stuff, because I assume that's going to be the acid-free. But anyhow, packing paper or cotton balls. I've seen a lot of bigger collectors use cotton balls to stuff their masks. I don't personally, just because it makes a huge fucking mess if you want to take your face form out of the mask. And the paper is superior in my opinion, just because you can have a reusable face form that doesn't make a mess all over your floor every time you want to take out a mask for review or whatever. But anyhow, you also... getting back to display heads, the main reason I avoid display heads is the fact that they will stretch out the head harness. The biggest thing you want to avoid, or one of the biggest things, is putting undue stress or pressure anywhere on the mask that would lead to its degradation. And that's the one thing that's one of the biggest things that are more than likely to fail first on the mask, is the head harness. And styrofoam, or just any sort of display heads in general, are going to be a major culprit in degrading the harness. So as you can see here, all of my masks are just laid out in a natural position where the harness is not going to get, stressed on anytime soon. It's all very loose and relaxed. I typically have them displayed with the filters off and sealed, or sealed as much as possible, because I do have a few filters that do not have any sort of caps with them, but that does not matter. I typically have the filters off for display purposes, unless they're masks like this Repro Zelensky Kumant, which I could have with the filter off, but I decided not to. And then masks like this Czech OM10, just cheek filter masks, where it's easier to display the mask with the filters installed. But anyhow, that's typically the way I do it in that regards. I forgot this last time I tried to do a video on this. Masks with hoses is a very difficult mask to display, because of hoses will typically have some sort of permanent set to them, and they'll be long, and they'll really limit which way you can set up the masks. In this display here, you can really see the sort of thing I do with hosed masks. As you can see, I try to have them in a state where the hose is not able or likely to get permanent set, and if it does, it is not really a detriment to the overall function and quality of the mask. And then in some cases, like with these two post-war Japanese masks here, I have the hoses removed entirely, just due to the fragility of the materials, or just for the sake of preservation. I don't recommend doing this to everyone who doesn't know what they're doing or how to remove a fixed hose, but And I also do that with a lot of my Soviet masks as well. As you can see, I have a dedicated hose drawer where I keep, if the hose is removable, by all means remove it and store it somewhere safe, because you don't want, you want to avoid having hoses getting stressed on as much as possible. So like I said, if the hose is removable, remove it. It's better in the long run. I don't recommend putting them inside the carriers. And that's another thing as well. Masks, do not store them in the carriers. And, well, you can, but just by all means avoid it. The only time I would recommend storing a mask inside the carrier is if you live in a room where there's just no way to hide the masks from sunlight or, you know, things of that nature. And you just want to protect them from the elements. But yeah, putting the mask in the carrier, a lot of carriers are designed so that the masks are made as compact as possible, and this will definitely lead to some permanent set. Most permanent set and gas masks are a direct result of them being stored in a carrier for a long period of time, and so that's kind of a thing you want to avoid. And you may argue, well, it can't really get any worse than it already is, but then again, yeah, why would you want to improve upon that and, you know, continue to let it permanently sit like that? You know, just, it's not something you want to do to your masks, personally. But yeah, storing them in the masks isn't going to kill them per se, but it certainly is a detriment on the health, and especially with these Schlemmmaske or helmet-style masks here, where they have to be folded a certain way to store in the carriers, and that's going to create some stress points of stress. The rubber will be all creased, and that will lead to cracking. In fact, this PMG2 and this PMG here do have a couple areas. Actually, no, maybe not the PMG2. Definitely the PMG has a couple areas of stress cracking from being stored for long periods of time, and that's not something you want, obviously. So, anyways, other than that, let's see. Things to also avoid: plastics. Not just any type of plastics, more specifically plastic bags and sheet plastic, things like that. You definitely want to avoid that because petroleum and latex natural rubber do not mix. I know a collector who goes by the name of Merrick. He had a Japanese Type 1, much like me, that he unfortunately stored with a bunch of plastic bags stuffed inside the mask, or maybe it was just near some plastic, and it just melted half the mask. Half the mask was just completely gone and just turned to goo. So yeah, plastic and natural rubber don't mix. I can't really say the same for other types of rubber, such as butyl or silicone, but, you know, just to be on the safe side, avoid plastic of any kind. That's not to say that the plastic that the masks have on them are going to be a detriment to the rubber. As far as I know, that is not the case, because they are typically made with stronger polymers that are not as able or not as likely to give off fumes that will melt the rubber and things like that. And typically masks that have plastic hardware are well past the age of using natural rubber as the norm, but even still, that case that the polymers used will be higher strength and less likely to give off fumes is definitely the case. That's pretty much the gist of what I have to say on terms of storage. One final note on display, I guess. If you have a mask, these two are my prime examples. These two are kind of difficult to store just because of the way they are shaped. For example, with this S10 here, you have the drinking lever, which kind of juts out and makes it difficult to store properly. Use anything to your advantage to prop the masks up and put as much stress off of it as possible. As you can see here, I have a rolled up sock underneath there to sort of prop it up and make it sit up nicely, but also not to have any stress on any major components. And with the M40 here, I don't think I really need to do this. I have the lid to a C2A1 canister casing underneath there. I forgot the exact reason why I did that, but yeah, just any little thing that will allow the mask to have no stress on it. For instance, these MCU2P, I have the outserts installed to protect the lens from dust, but I also do not have the the rubber band underneath the voice emitter to reduce stress and to improve the longevity of the outsert and its hardware. So yeah, I would also definitely recommend storing masks without lens outserts or hoods installed, because I'll always typically have the hoods folded inside their carriers, and outserts, you know, don't store those rolled up ready to use. Just have them loose and make sure they're not in contact with anything that's going to hurt them, or just not sitting in a way that they're going to warp or permanently set. But Yeah, the reason I store masks without lens outserts is it's mainly just to protect the outserts themselves, because with masks, especially like the M17 series here, you notice how the lenses are crimped on the bottom side of that. I imagine if you leave the rubber apron folded around those for too long, the crimping is gonna set itself into the rubber and make an imprint, and that really isn't gonna hurt it, but it's just, something you don't want to do, I guess. So definitely avoid storing masks with outserts and hoods on them, and hoods especially more than outserts, because hoods are going to get wrinkled and probably permanently set and probably get stress cracks if you don't store them correctly, and potentially stuck together as well. Of course, that could be remedied with talcum powder, but it's just better to have them off the mask where they're less likely to get wrinkles and things like that. So yeah, and that's, again, pretty much everything I have to say about masks. In regards to, I keep going on remembering more things that I didn't mention. In terms of humidity, they always say to store your masks in dry places, dark, dry places, obviously away from sunlight. UV rays are the biggest killer of natural rubber, and probably other types of rubbers as well. But in terms of temperature, there really doesn't, unless your mask is on the breaking point or the verge of melting, it really isn't too big of a concern. Just, be sensible about it. Don't make sure the place you're storing them isn't a literal oven, and humidity, I would imagine, could be remedied by getting like some sort of desiccant or whatever the hell those things are called. Just something you could put a humidifier. If you can't afford that, again, get some like desiccant gel or some moisture remover tubs or whatever. Just, I don't have those because obviously this closet, even in the southern Tennessee here, it doesn't get as hot and humid as to be a threat to the masks themselves. And I really don't own anything that is in a state of condition where humidity would be a major concern. But again, it's better to keep your masks away from as much humidity as possible, and not to mention obviously UV rays, as stated several times. And yeah, again, that's pretty much it. If you have any comments, questions, corrections, or concerns, drop them in the comments below. I hope I covered everything and I don't kick myself in the ass later remembering something that I didn't mention. But anyhow, yeah, I'm Duke New with 3D. I'll be updating with more masks in my collection hopefully soon, and I'll see you all later.